Hi everybody, it's Chris. Welcome back to the Carpenter's Brew, a weekly Bible study designed to be very short and to hopefully offer comfort during these anxious times. Today's gospel for reflection is the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. Rather than read it to you here, I'll let you kind of read it, and then I'll just kind of talk about what I feel that it's about. There's a lot to unpack in this story. We have a man blind since birth. He has the good fortune of being next to Jesus and the apostles when they're walking past. The apostles want to know why he's blind, what sin has caused this. And Jesus takes a different approach. He comes from a completely different angle. He points out that his blindness is an opportunity to show God's mercy and love. And he goes about healing him. He spits in the earth, takes the earth and spits into it and forms a pack to put over the man's eyes. Then he sends him to go wash it off. And after this, he washes it off. People are in disbelief. You know, is this the same guy? How does he see? Is he just the guy that looks like the guy that can see? The Pharisees are angry for a number of reasons. One, Jesus did it on the Sabbath. Two, they're upset that he healed a man on the Sabbath. Pretty interesting. And so there's just a lot to unpack. They even go so far as to get his parents involved to see if it's really him. But what I want to concentrate on is the actual story of the sight. Because when I look at this story, I'm drawn to where it occurs. It occurs in the Gospel of John. And the Gospel of John is this uniquely mystical text in the Gospels. The Christian community that John comes out of is about 100 years old. So they've had plenty of time to reconcile their experience with the Messiah with his true nature. And we see that in John. We see a Jesus that is fully God. And for me, the story of the blind man is a story of us. In that the blind man is, just as he can't see and then is awoken to the light, we go through a religious conversion ourselves where we're either nominally faithful or we don't believe at all, to a point where we have a strong belief. And I think it's important that we kind of draw this parallel from this text. So to me, John is talking about something that I myself am going through in my own movement from darkness to light. So it's interesting that in John, it is constantly brought up that the man is blind from birth. They want to make sure, John wants to make sure that we understand that this guy has never known light. He has never seen. And so this becomes a parable of conversion, right? Because we feel this way. And the thing that John does that's pretty interesting is all of this occurs through Jesus. The man doesn't express faith in who Jesus is until well after he's healed. And I think that that's really something the modern church could learn from. Because so much of it is if you believe, if you believe. John's actually blowing that out the water. This guy doesn't ask to be healed. We don't even know if he wants to be healed, though we're sure that he's grateful that he is. But Jesus just does it. And he opens the man's eyes. And I think that that demonstrates, at least to me, that the Holy Spirit kind of just blows wherever it wants to. It's not super interested in what I want or even what you want, but if we can just be open to that Spirit, it'll give us a spiritual insight that we've never had before. The second thing that I get out of this particular gospel passage is that conversion takes patience. And it often comes through maturity. When we hear this story of the man, it's actually pretty interesting because he's healed. And when he first talks about Jesus in verse 11, he refers to him as the man they call Jesus. And yet, by verse 17, he's referring to Jesus as a prophet. And he later on declares that his work is the work of God. And I think that the blind man is much like us. He's coming to terms with what he has experienced. And I think about us all as kind of doing the same thing, right? So maybe we're drawn to a spiritual community because we love the people in it. Maybe we love the music. Maybe it's the liturgy that talks to us, communion. There are very different things that attract us to a spiritual community. My own conversion came from a deep sense of social justice that the Christian community has. And once I came in through that door, I was able to spend time with the other sacraments and mysteries of the church. And that really deepened who I became as a Christian. And I think that for most of us, it's in spending time with the mysteries that it allows us to really get to know the divine and to understand who Christ is and to see what the world is like. Many times we're a lot like the blind man. You know, we have these kind of blinders on, and we tend to see the world through our own kind of selfish and self-centered ways. And when we become open to the divine's will, you look at creation differently. Creation becomes important in a new way. We realize how grateful we should be for the bountiful earth, or for the communities that we're placed in, or even for the small blessings that we have, even in times of anxiety like the ones that we're living in now. And I think it's super important that we become aware of this. And we should take things like John's Gospel and use them to kind of open up our own spiritual awareness. And so the question becomes, during times right now where, say, churches are closed and we can't nurture our spirit in the same way we traditionally have, particularly those of us who are liturgical Christians, what do we do? And so what I think that we should do right now is we need to take the scriptures. It doesn't have to be John, it can be any one of them, and pick a verse or two. And as we look at them, just read one or two, maybe no more than 3 verses. Close the gospel, put it down, close our eyes, and just take what we read and let it kind of spin in our heads a little bit. Think about, is there something that I haven't heard in this reading before? Is there something in this reading that means something to me? Is it talking to my heart? Can I even project myself into this gospel story? And what would I be like if I was there seeing this happen? And really allow that to digest into who we are as human beings and to fill our heart some. And then, when we're done with that, write down our brief summation of our reflection and send it into your pastor or your priest and see what they have to say. Compare it against what they do. For years I taught in youth ministry, and I have to say that teenagers are great because they're blank slates. And because they've never read it before, their insights are sometimes deeply penetrating in a way that mine isn't. And some of them have impacted me greatly. And so when we do this, we create a new method for us to grow in the scriptures and grow in the Spirit and do it in a manner that doesn't rely necessarily on the big group all the time. And that's just something that we can use during this time. Remember that the scriptures are there to nurture you, to offer you sustenance, and that sooner or later this too will be over and we'll be back together as a big community celebrating. Well, that's all the time I have for today. I hope that this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing each of you soon. Thank you, and God bless.